Welcome back to Talking Devils podcast, brought to you by talkingdevils.co.uk, your number one independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Keane, here today, joined by former Manchester United player Phil Marsh. Here today to talk all things United. We're going to review the Omonia game briefly. We will also talk about the upcoming game this weekend against Newcastle. We'll also talk about Cristiano Ronaldo and his role this season and kind of how that's going to evolve throughout the season as well, considering our injury problems up front. So do smash like the video, guys. Hit that subscribe button. As always, do drop a comment in and let us know how you're feeling as well. Phil, I know the lads touched on the game last night in the match reaction. They covered it a lot. But obviously, yourself and myself were not on that podcast last night. So I suppose, first of all, before we kind of touch on Newcastle, what was your thoughts on kind of last night's 1-0 win against Omonia? Considering, by and large, I think many of us thought we were probably going to steamroll them, considering the second half we had against them the week before. So kind of, what was your overall thoughts on last night's game?
Yeah, obviously it was a frustrating night. I think, with the amount of chances and possession that we had over the 90 minutes, I think, most people would have looked at that and thought, yeah, we should have probably won the game 5-6. But I just thought it was a sort of tale of two stories, really. I think, obviously, from their point of view, they sat in. That was always going to be their game plan. The keeper had a fantastic game by all accounts. I think a lot of that was down to some poor finishing, though, if I'm being brutally honest. I think a lot of the saves, as Paul Scholes said last night, he should make them saves. But, fair play to the keeper. I thought he kept them in the game really well. But, yeah, it just seemed like it was going to be one of them days where, nothing was quite falling for us. The chances weren't going in, I think. Certainly up until sort of the last couple of minutes when McTominay scored that goal, it just didn't look like it was going to happen for us. But, inevitably it was just about getting the 3 points. I don't really think we should dwell on the, majority of people's opinions about how many chances we missed. And, it was a bad performance. I think, you have them games sometimes where everything sort of doesn't seem like it's going to click. And, imperative last night was that we got the 3 points, which still gives us that opportunity of finishing top of the group. So, yeah, it was a disappointing night in a certain aspect where, you probably would have wanted us to score a few more goals and, maybe give some of the younger lads, some opportunities later on in the game in an ideal world. But again, we've came out and we've won the game, and it's, in Man United style in the last minutes of a game when teams are tired, they've worked hard to try and get something out of the game. And, we've kept going till the last minute and finally got that goal.
Yeah, look, I've seen a lot of social media hysteria, in the last kind of 24 hours or so, saying it's a bad performance. Now, look, if you look at the overall game, looking at the chances we created, I wouldn't call it a bad performance. I'd say we were poor in front of goal, all right. I'd say, look, some of the chances we created, we should have put away. But if you're talking a performance, a footballing performance, it wasn't a bad performance. We had over 71, 72% possession. We created a heap of chances. On another day, we win that game 5 or 6-0. And also, as well, you have to take into account, their keeper had an absolute worldly of a game. Their goalkeeper was unbelievable last night. He pulled off a lot of great saves. We were talking off air. If you look at some of the players who got the chances, they're not gilt-edged goal scorers, like Fred, players like that, who, when they did get a couple of them chances, they didn't pull them away. And Cristiano didn't get many clear-cut chances last night. And on another day, though, we win that game 5 or 6-0. And look, if you look at the substitutions last night, I thought Ten Hag got a bang on. If you look at kind of bringing on Christian Eriksen when we needed it to kind of to increase the tempo. Bringing on Luke Shaw, more of attacking fullback. And obviously, look, McTominay at the time, I'll be honest, I was thinking, go on, bring on an extra attacker. We need an extra man in the box. But look, fair play, McTominay got in there, he got the finish, and we got the 3 points at the end of the day. Funnily enough, that's the first 19-minute goal we've got in Europe. The first 19-minute winner we've got in Europe since 99, which is absolutely madness, I think. So many years ago, that it's the first 98-minute winner we've got in Europe since then. But yeah, look, it's it's one of them where, look, you dwell on it briefly, but you have to look at the bigger picture and say, like, you got the 3 points. Look, if we didn't get the 3 points, we're in massive trouble in terms of the shape of the group. But we have a big game against Sheriff in 2 weeks' time. And obviously Sociedad do have to go to Omonia. So, like, we can only hope that, we do our own job, and maybe Omonia do us a favour, in that game in 2 weeks' time. But look, it's on to the next one. It's job done. It's 3 points. Look, not the most ideal circumstances from a fan perspective. Yes, a draw would have been embarrassing last night. It really would have. But look, we didn't draw. We won the game. So, like, you have to look at it and say, like, whereas, look, there is improvements he made in the attacking areas in the finishing department, but overall, we didn't give up many chances last night. De Gea had one of his quietest nights in Old Trafford in quite some time, compared to previous games. If you look, in reality, it was De Gea's quietest game all season, like at home. You look at all the other home games, we conceded a heap of chances. So, like, it is on to the next one. I think people have kind of overreacted to the performance and the result, really.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the overall performance last night, I think, we was always probably going to dominate possession. But I think what would have been more worrying from my point of view is that we wasn't creating chances, and I think we definitely did that last night. We have struggled previously against teams that come and just sit in and try and put men behind the ball. So I think from that point of view, I think we created more than enough chances to win the game of football. I think that kind of finishing and the lack of quality in front of goal isn't going to sort of be a sort of thing that we're going to see all season. So as long as we got the 3 points last night, as we've said, we don't want to dwell on that performance too much. I think keeper had a great game, and hopefully now the players will sort of see that as I need to sort of maybe polish up a little bit on my finishing, get a little bit more practice in for certain players who maybe need that, and the next game, when they do get them opportunities, they're there to be taken.
Yeah, and look, I dare to say, like, we spoke about this off air. Like, I think it could be a different situation against Newcastle, that, like, let's say their 18-yard box won't be as congested as what Omonia's was, if we be brutally honest about it. Like, they'd 10 players, 9-10 players in the box at a time. So when we were trying to take shots in the box and put crosses in. So, like, I think, look, it's one of them. They played for they played to the absolute death. They put their bodies on the line. Like, look, it's one of them games where, look, we expected to win, and look, we did in the end. But I think when I see some of the criticism I've seen online in the last day or so, like the last day, like, a lot of players getting criticised. Bruno, for example, one of them. I thought Bruno had one of his better games last night in terms of creating chances. Now, albeit his finishing was not great either, but in terms of getting on the ball and trying to make things happen, he created most chances as well.
Definitely, and I think another point as well is, in that kind of a game, I think you've got to give them a little bit of credit as well, because they've stayed in the game, and once it gets past half time and gets past the hour mark and they've still not conceded, their game plan and their mindset is right. We're making sure that we keep a clean sheet here, and to be honest, I think they defended for their lives, and you've got to give them a little bit of credit for the way they performed on the night. So yeah, I wouldn't be too sort of critical of our players and certain individuals. Yeah, probably certain players didn't play as well as they could have done. Yeah, if we'd have scored in the first 10, 15 minutes, the floodgates probably would have opened. But, you've sometimes, in a game like that, you've got to hold your hands up and say, they defended brilliantly. We wasn't at the races, with some of the goals that we should have probably scored. And that was just the story of the game. And the keeper had one in a probably 1,000 performances type of game. So, yeah, just move on. We've got the 3 points and we're looking forward to the next game now.
Yeah, and also just to touch on their goalkeeper as well, like, he's a lifelong Man United fan, so he found that extra 10-15% to impress at Old Trafford last night. Like, it's his dream to play there. And look, that's one thing. Look, I loved it. I loved it after the game, seeing him, like,
Yeah, he was made. His smile was
Yeah,
nice moment that. And I think not just the keeper, I think, some of them players, that's probably, one of the biggest games they'll ever played in, coming to Old Trafford for any footballer is you raise your game 10-15% regardless, because when you come and play at Old Trafford, it's a special place to play football, and you always want to try and upset and put on a good performance, and we may see that goalkeeper get a move off the back of that because of how good he was, and the way he was sort of so infectious after the game. So yeah, fair play to them, and really good sort of performance and sort of memory for that goalkeeper.
Yeah, look, and you know yourself, Phil, from walking out to the Theatre of Dreams, walking out to Old Trafford, there's no better feeling in the world.
No.
Walking out to that stadium, and for him as a fan to go to play in that stadium and have the game of his life, that's something he's going to cherish for the rest of his life, and
yeah, definitely.
Fair play to him. Look, he had a great game, and look, it was nearly to our detriment, but look, at the end of the day, we can praise it now that we got the 3 points in the end.
Yeah, he was probably quite happy actually that goal went in so late on, because as he's a United fan, he was probably thinking, we're not getting through. At least United might still be able to win the group. He's had a worldie of a performance, and fair play to him. And I'm hoping
he's had worldie in front of Ten Hag. He's his goalkeeping idol in David De Gea. Sir Alex was in the stands. To be fair, the dream comes true.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better for him, and he's only the second choice goalkeeper, so fair play. And as we said, hopefully he can either get a run of games in the team now off the back of that, or he may even nick a move to someone in England. Might not be the Prem, but Championship, which would be brilliant for him.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. But look, we'll move on anyway. We'll move on to kind of this weekend, Newcastle United. Obviously, look, they're a big club in England. They've had the takeover in the last 12 months. They seem that they've, I suppose, come up from the pits of hell nearly, considering where they were under Mike Ashley. Eddie Howe's come in, looks like he steadied ship. They've brought in a good few players into the squad. Before we kind of touch on our approach to this game and how we think Man United will approach this game, I just kind of want to touch on Newcastle kind of just at the start. Just kind of, what are your thoughts on their overall progress under Eddie Howe since he's taken over and some of the new signings they've made?
Yeah, to be honest, I really enjoy watching Newcastle. I think, especially this season, I think they've been, fantastic with the recruitment. I think the style of play that they've got now, I think, is really good and exciting. I think they've got some brilliant players, albeit some of them haven't been fit all season. Like St. Maximan, who's been out injured, but I think when they get the best starting 11 and everybody's fit on the pitch, for me, that they're probably a contender this season to break into that top six. They've got a goal scorer in Callum Wilson up front. They've got the lad Almiron this season, who's stepped up to the plate. I think he's had a lot of criticism, and maybe not hit the heights that he was probably thinking. But I think recently he looks, like he's sort of found a bit of form. They've got some quality players at the back with Trippier, experience, good at set pieces. And yeah, I just think, the way that they play, they've got a massive fan base that's, brilliant, always, massive followings, whether they're home or away. And, with the financial backing that they've now got, I think, in the next couple of years, they could be a team that sort of, is looking at breaking into that top four, because potential and sort of, the progress they're making, and they've got a sound manager there who's, knows his stuff, and he's got the team playing really well. I think, they could be definitely one to watch in the coming years, because, as I've just said, they've got good players now already, but, they're only going to add to that with the sort of financial side of things that they've been given now.
Yeah, definitely. I look at the way the approach they've taken in the last 12 months. You look at other clubs years ago when they've all got big owners, new owners like Portsmouth, other clubs like that, Everton, where they kind of splash the money recklessly, and they've bought
impulsive. Yeah,
they've been very impulsive, and they've spent money, and there was no real plan behind it. Where look at the way Newcastle have done it. Like, now look, we might not agree with the type of ownership they have. Like, look, that's a different story altogether. But if you take that out of the equation and like you actually look at like what they've done, they've brought in Ashworth and from Brighton, like football director. Like, that's a brilliant move for recruitment. You look at the type of players they brought in. They brought in Guimaraes, they brought in Trippier, they brought in Isak, Dan Burn, Botman, players like that, who are not necessarily superstars, but brilliant players to come in and fit your system. And like Hill's really got more organized. Like, he's turned, like, if you look at what he's done with Almiron, like Almiron is a player who under Steve Bruce is probably on the fringes. And you look at the way how he's rejuvenated him. He's like Eddie Howe has kind of almost done the similar thing with Almiron, like he did with Ryan Fraser or Bournemouth. Like, he really, like, remember Ryan Fraser? He was the second most assists in the league under Eddie Howe at Bournemouth. Now, like, look, Almiron is kind of on that similar kind of journey under Eddie Howe here at Newcastle. And you look at like the biggest surprise to me out of all the players, and it's not even the signings, is how he rejuvenated Joe Linton into a player who looked like someone who didn't know how to play football properly to one of the most underrated players actually in the league right now. I remember his performance against us last season at St. James's Park. He was brilliant in the centre of midfield. And that's one success story out of this tenure so far, is how he's improved Joe Linton. I look at players like Kieran Trippier. I know we were linked with him last summer. I know Richard said there we should have bought him 2 or 3 years ago. Like, we were linked to him last summer under Solskjaer. United weren't willing to pay the extra few quid for him. When in reality, when you look at our right back situation, like we've only one fit right back now, and he doesn't fancy Wan-Bissaka. Like, so, like, you look at that situation, Newcastle recruited very shrewdly there. So I look at the way they've done it in the last 12 months, and they've done it right. And I was actually I was speaking to the guys off a Newcastle podcast 12 months ago. And like I said to them at the time, I was like, I think Eddie Howe is probably going to be a placeholder. He'll steady the ship, and then you'll get a new manager in, and you'll go that one step further. But I look at the way he's done it in the last 12 months, and with the right backing and the right board behind him, I don't think he's going to be a placeholder. I think he's going to be one to help him make that next step. Now, what I mean by that next step is it's not Champions League. It's not, winning the title. I think that next step for them is just getting into the top half of this table, solidifying being a top half team, and potentially getting Europa League or Europa Conference League this season. Like, I think he's someone to help him to get that and get solidified as a top end of the table team. And when he does that, then I think they'll be able to attract more elite players to the football club. And look, I can kind of relate to Newcastle in a small way, because like if you look at what we're currently going through with the Glazers, they went through a similar thing with Mike Ashley. Now, obviously, the situation we have the Glazers is a much wider situation than the one at Newcastle that had Ashley. Like if you're talking finances, but both, like, the moral of the story is both of us had really bad owners who didn't give a crap about the football clubs and were bleeding them dry. Now, luckily for them, they've got out of that, and they've a new owner. They looks like their owner is mean business, and they look like they're moving on in the right journey. But what I mean is how I could relate to them is because I've seen some of the stuff that their fans were going through, and I have them saying thoughts about our football club, thinking, we should be doing better. We should be higher up the table. We should be, striving for success. So, like, I'm like, in a way, as much as how they're creeping up on us on the table, and look, potentially they could end up being a rival very soon. I have to be happy. I think I'm happy for him, because I see what we went through what we're currently going through at the Glazers, and they went through a similar thing with Mike Ashley.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head with the way they've done it in terms of, it's more methodical, where they've not just, started splashing money and trying to go from finishing 10th to, top 4, because, it's not practical, it's not realistic. And I think with the signings that they've made, obviously they've kept the manager who they've, going to give him the backing of that. I think he's started, working his magic with certain players, whether it was, putting an arm around them or just, getting them back to basics and giving them that love and whatever it needed to get them back to the level he was at. I think Joe Linton's a perfect example of that. I think he's obviously shown a lot of faith in him and give him that new lease of life. Almiron's definitely another one. And I think, the repaying him now on the pitch with the performances and the consistency of the performances, which is the massive and the key thing for any successful side. But yeah, I think Newcastle, with the fan base and the structure they've got, and they're a massive club, and for me, I am actually happy in a way that they are where they are, and they've been given an opportunity after such a sort of bad owner, if you like, that has done similar to what the Glazers have done at our club. That now they've come out the other side of that, and hopefully they'll reap the rewards of that in the coming years.
Yeah, well, I hope they reap the rewards to a degree, because obviously, if they become a rival,
not too good of a
yeah,
rival, but again, it's one of them. Newcastle seems to me as though it's proper football, what I would call a proper football club.
yeah.
Proper fans, proper club, got a good history, good ground. Not one of these where it's just
They're not like, basically, Phil. We won't even beat around the bush anymore. They're not a manufacturer club like Manchester City, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Newcastle's well deserving of where they are today with the financial backing they've been given. That's all I'll say on that.
Yeah, look,
they've earned the right basically to be in the position that they're in.
Yeah, exactly. Like they weren't down in League Two like a couple of years before they got their thing. Like before they got their ownership changed. Let's be honest. But look, enough about. And I don't want to talk about Manchester City, because I'm still kind of still a bit salty. Let's say over 2 weeks ago. But anyway, we'll move on to actually just unite ourselves, and obviously the game coming up this weekend, because obviously both teams are in form in the league. Obviously Newcastle had a great win over Fulham last week, 5-1. Win over Fulham, and they played really well. They absolutely destroyed them, to be quite honest. And it was a great game. On the flip side, then we had a very good win at Goodison Park last week, 2-1. And we were hopeful that we'd get a win, we'd bounce back. So like, how are you feeling going into to Sunday's game, considering, look, we've had Europa League in between, and kind of I suppose Newcastle are kind of riding high at the minute. Are you confident going into this weekend's game?
Yeah, you've got to feel confident, I think, with the performance against Everton. After the City game, I was really happy with that. I think it was a good reaction. It wasn't a perfect performance by any stretch, but I think certain players given the opportunity after a few bad performances at City, like Casemiro and Luke Shaw, who came in and I thought was man of the match for me. I think that's a massive boost and confidence for the team moving forward, knowing that we've got players who've been playing well, but when they have a bad performance, the manager's got that in him that he can switch it up, and you've got players who can come straight in and hit the ground running. And I think that competition is definitely what was needed, and I think that's why we have seen such a turnaround in sort of fortunes and performances with certain players, because now we know that they can't rest on the laurels, and that if they do have a couple of bad games, that this manager's not going to stand for it. He's going to make sure he reshuffles the pack and gives lads who's worthy of a shout in the team again, because we've seen it this season on numerous occasions with loads of players. So for me, I think now it's a stage of, okay, the Man City game's been and gone. I wouldn't have judged us off that anyway. I think that was just, it's one of them games. They're up here and we're here at the moment. And I think that's you could say that about any other team in the league at the moment. But in terms of all the other games post the Brighton and Brentford game, we've played reasonably well.
Yeah,
we looked more solid. We've got a settled back four now. Obviously, Varane's been injured last couple of games, but I think he's back now. And for me, we just look sort of more organised, and like we've sort of got the opportunity to start building them relationships which you need. And any successful team has settled partnerships, and I think that's why we've sort of turned it around so much. And I'm obviously excited to see us come up against Newcastle, because I think this is probably a bigger test than probably what the City game was, in the respect that this is a team that's beatable at this moment in time, but they're in a really good position. They're in really good form. They've got players playing well. And I think for us, it's going to be sort of a benchmark for where we're at. And, if we can get the 3 points against Newcastle and, carry on and go on another little run, then, that'll be fantastic. And I think it's something that's definitely achievable with the squad that we've got at the moment.
Yeah, it definitely is achievable. I think, like Phil, if you look at this game, is a start for a 3 games, which could really, I think, shape our season going into the World Cup in a few weeks' time. Like you have, if Newcastle, you've Spurs, and then we've Chelsea all in a row. So I think, look, we need to get the ball rolling, especially going into that Spurs game. I think we need a win and to really kind of boost confidence because, look, whatever you say about Antonio Conte's style of play, Spurs are resilient under Conte. They really are. So we definitely need a result. And you're right. Like, look, it'll be a good kind of measure of where we are, considering Newcastle's form has been quite decent recently, and they have a very good team. And they're a team who, look, they won't give us anything easy, like on all areas of the pitch. And one thing I'm actually happy about is that Isak's out this weekend up front. So like that's a massive boost. He's a brilliant striker, brilliant player. Really like him. I'm glad he's actually out this weekend because he could have been a threat, a different type of threat that we faced recently, and someone who I think could have probably got at our defence. But like I look at this and I look at our midfield. I look at them players like Casemiro, Eriksen, Fernandes. I'm looking at players like that and saying, like, look, can you take this game by the scruff of the neck and control that midfield and pin Newcastle back? Interested to see if they can do that. Like, I'm interested to see, how our forward line react after a game where, look, we couldn't score. We couldn't score. We literally couldn't until the last minute. So, like, I'm just interested to see kind of how it's not even a reaction because we won the last game, but I'm just interested to see if we can be ruthless in a big Premier League game. Can we take it to Newcastle? Will it be a case, we might have to ride our luck? I personally hope not. I'd like to see us take the game to them. I'd like to see our fullbacks bring them back. I'd like to see Casemiro kind of dominate the midfield. I'd love to see that. Now, obviously, they have a great midfield as well. So I think that the midfield battle, I think whoever wins that will win the game. 110%. I think if we win that midfield battle, we'll win that game. Because if we can keep Guimaraes quiet, we have a massive chance. If Joe Linton can't run about and be nasty towards our players, that'd be a massive boost. But look, I think it's we're coming to such a critical period now where, let's say we win on Sunday, we'll be riding a very high wave of momentum, and you can talk about that Man City loss. But look, let's be honest, they're the best team in the world at the moment. I know Real Madrid won the Champions League. They won the Champions League. But Manchester City tore them apart over 2 legs. City just switched off momentarily and Madrid went through. But Man City are the best team in the world at this moment in time. And like, not many people were expecting us to win that game. Do you know what I mean?
No. Yeah.
And their average goals that Etihad this season is like 4 goals on average. So like it's a tough place for anyone to go this season. And look, I think they're going to go to Anfield and batter Liverpool this weekend. But if you look at the rest of our games post Brentford, we've played really well. We've been organised. We've scored goals. We've looks like we're building relationships throughout the pitch. I think this is just a massive game. And look, if you look at certain players like Rashford, Anthony, who's playing, I think Anthony, where look, some parts of his game can really improve. He's riding a very good wave of form at the moment. I want to see him keep this up against a very good team. And yeah, look, it's going to be an interesting game. I think could be, and actually could be a fiery game, really, to be honest.
I think the biggest thing for me is that I've sort of enjoyed and liked is even in the games sort of we haven't played really well in. We've been able to just grind out a result. Against Southampton, it wasn't pretty, but we was able to just grind out a result. And I think that's a sign of a good team. When you're not playing well, but you're still picking up points and you're still grinding out results and being able to sort of see a game out Whereas I think last season and in previous seasons, that was where we've sort of faltered a lot.
Mm.
We weren't able to see games out. We weren't able to, manage the game properly to make sure we come out of the game with something. And I think that's where we've sort of massively improved, with Martinez and people like that coming in, a bit more experience and a bit more sort of nous on the pitch and managing the game during the game, if you like. So for me, I think that's, a massive part of why we have been a little bit more successful. But again, it comes down to, can we keep these players fit now? Can we keep these players, playing regular football and building up them partnerships? And, as long as we can do that, for me, I think, we should be able to have a relatively good season. And what I mean by that is, can we finish to push to finish in the top four? For me, third or fourth is achievable this year for me, I think, in a realistic manner. And I think a domestic trophy, whether that's, Europa League or whether that's just, the Carabao Cup or something, that would be, for me, a really good season this year and something we can build on. And, we've touched on this many a time. I think this club and this group massively needs that taste of success. If they can get a trophy, and a feel for what that feels like, then again, that could be something that's a catalyst moving forward.
Definitely. Look, I think a trophy this season would be absolutely great. Kind of kickstart the Eric Ten Hag era. And whether that's Europa League, Carabao Cup or FA Cup, like, look, that'd be fantastic. I'd actually love to win the FA Cup this year. The FA Cup is just a brilliant day out. I went to the last FA Cup final right in Wembley, and like, look, albeit like probably one of the worst games of football I've ever went to in my life, because Chelsea, you got like Phil Jones fouled Hazard, and they scored the penalty, and then literally Chelsea done a Mourinho that day, and they literally just sat in the 18 all day and just sat there for the whole game. But yeah, like if you look at like in terms of a trophy, it'd be brilliant. Like, there's some of these players who've not won anything, it'd be great for some of them to get that taste of success and really kind of drive on and develop a winning mentality, within the dressing room. And also as well, like, I think the top four is a must for me this season. Like, I'm looking at the situation that Chelsea, they have a new manager. Okay, they're playing a bit well, but now Reece James is going to be out till potentially after the World Cup. So, like, look, that we should be trying to capitalize on that. Liverpool are probably in their worst period nearly in a decade now. Like, we should be capitalizing on that. Like, Spurs, yes, they're resilient, but they're not playing well. So we need to, like, you look at this period right now, we need to capitalize, especially like after this game. We've Tottenham and Chelsea after this. We really need to capitalize on this, because that, as I said, it could really set our season. Yeah. Between Spurs' form right now and you look at Chelsea's injury to Reece James, we've a massive chance to really kind of make a massive mark in this top four.
Yeah, I think, as you just said there, these next three games are going to be a sort of massive indicator for me of, whether we're going to be right in the mix to finish in the top four, or whether, we're not going to be quite making the grade. Because, as you say, if we can beat Tottenham and, out of these next three games, I think you'd probably take 7 points. If I'm being honest, I think 7 points would be a good sort of outcome from these three games that we've got coming up. If we can come away with 7 points from these next three games, and then we've got a better run in the league, that's fantastic. And the teams we've just mentioned there who aren't playing great, we need to make sure that we capitalise on it, because these teams aren't going to stay at the level they're at for the rest of the season. Let's be honest, they are going to improve and get better. But if we can get that gap, as much as we can, and then if we do ever, drop points, it's not, a massive issue. I think that's the time now, as you've just said, with all the stuff that's going on. You need to make the most of it and just try and keep, picking up as many points as you can every week.
Definitely. But like, look, we are going to face our own case of adversity this season. It is going to happen. There's going to come a point where, look, you could argue it happened at the start with them two embarrassing defeats at the start of the season. Like, you can argue that was their sticky point. But there is going to come a time where there's going to be a loss. where we don't expect to lose, or there's going to be a draw where we don't expect to draw. And I just want to see how this team can really react to that and, like, really move on. I know we talked about the Everton, that was a reaction. That was a reaction. But I want to see a game where we don't expect to win. Sorry, we expect to win and we don't win. How we react from that? Come back with a fire, a fury. I want to see us come back with that. So it'd be interesting to see kind of what happens throughout the rest of the season. On that, Phil, I want to touch on Ronaldo, because obviously former teammate of yours, you would know Ronaldo quite well. You shared a dressing room, a training ground with him. Obviously, look, Martial's in and out of the team with injury at the minute. He seems to be struggling. With injury, by the way, he's not struggling when he's on the pitch. Martial's actually playing quite well in the 4.5 halves of football we've seen him. He's actually been one of our best players. But obviously, Ronaldo looks like his role could potentially increase this season. When actually it looked like at one point he could potentially be out in the cold. What have you made of his reinduction to the team in the last couple of weeks? And also as well, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it, but you've obviously shared that dressing room with him, and you've seen his development from a young age as well. How do you think he would have been feeling when he got number 700 last week?
Yeah, well, just touching on the 700 goal, I think that was a massive moment for him. Obviously, his career has been always about, giving himself milestones, giving himself stuff to keep working towards. And I think 700 goals is absolutely incredible. And to still be playing in the Premier League at the age he is, and still scoring goals is just, it's unheard of. He's scary. How good and how dedicated he has been. So for me, I think, fair play to him, and I think that's all down to the hard work that he puts in off the pitch. I think his work rate is unrivaled in football. I think that's why he's maintained that level of performance for so long. His desire and his will to win at all costs and be the best that he can be is the reason why he's stacked up these incredible numbers, and he's still going strong. In terms of he's coming back into the team, I think obviously that has been forced with some of the injuries that we've got. Obviously Martial coming off, has made Ronaldo sort of be the sort of main striker again, if you like, at this moment in time, because I think Marks has been playing so well in the wide position. I think he's looking probably our best player at the minute for me going forward. I think he looks lively and like the most creative and sort of the one who's going to do anything for me, I think, at the moment. But yeah, I think obviously Ronaldo, he's going to sort of take a little bit of time to get back up to speed after not playing for so long, regularly. I think at the age he's at, it's going to be difficult with the congestion of fixtures that we've got, maybe having to play so many games in such a short turnaround. But I think he's capable of doing that. And yeah, I just think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think there's a lot of people who maybe think he may move on in January, or he may move on at the end of the season. For me, I think at this moment in time, with the way that Martial's been, and sort of the injury-prone Anthony Martial that we've seen over the last certainly 3 or 4 seasons, I think for me it's imperative that either A, he stays and we've got sort of a bit more depth in that position of the pitch, or if he is going to go, who we're going to bring in to sort of strengthen that, because we're definitely going to need another striker if he does move on. And I think, it's difficult at this moment in time to sort of pinpoint any particular player who would maybe come in and fit that system straight away. I think we've mentioned this numerous times about, trying to bring in the right fit for the club, the right person who's going to be a mainstay and somebody you can build a team around moving forward.
Yeah, look, when I look at the financial situation of the football club at the minute, Phil, and kind of the I suppose the murmurs coming from the football club that the cash flow is really low, and like we overspent. Well, according to the club, we've overspent last summer. We've went beyond our means last summer. Then I don't see a striker coming in January, regardless if Martial's injured or not. But I think I think we should keep Cristiano until next summer. If our budget is to get a striker next summer, we get the striker next summer. I think we can rotate him and Rashford as the strikers depending on the setup we're coming up against. And I think his experience in this kind of transitional period this season, I think, is needed. Look, and I think he's been a professional in the last couple of weeks because he's at the end of the day, like, look, he's Cristiano Ronaldo. Whatever you say about his current form or his age or anything this right now, he's Cristiano bloody Ronaldo. He's the greatest player of all time, right? And for him to accept his role right now and being the consummate professional the last couple of weeks when he's been on the bench, he's impressed me in that regard. And the fact he's come back into the team and he scored and, he's working hard, then look, I'm happy for him to remain for this season. I think, look, if we look at the players who are coming in for the system, I know we're looking at Ozyman from Napoli at the moment. Now, look, if we can bring him in next summer, then look, by all means, I'd be delighted. He's one of the best prospects in world football at the minute. And if you look what he's doing in the Champions League and you look what he's done to Virgil van Dijk in Naples a couple of weeks ago, like, he's an absolute monster of a player. And if we can get him in next summer, that'd be great. Or if we get Cody Gakpo in, one of the two, like, look, that's a great signing. And look, we would be moving in, in the right direction. But I think if you look at this season, I think Ronaldo is needed. Even if Martial didn't have the injury problems, he still is needed because we need depth up front. Considering we have a game every day, like 2 games every week. Between now and the World Cup and even after the World Cup, there's going to be a congested fixture list. Providing obviously we get through the group in the Europa League, like, there's still going to be a good amount of fixtures to play. So look, it's a tough one. It's one of them where we're going to need more depth up front even next summer anyway. And like, if you look at the players who are still there at the moment, you have Sancho, you have Ronaldo, you have Rashford, Martial, you have Alanga, McNeil is still in there on the squad, Garnacho. Like, there is options there. But it's just about now, I suppose, keeping our front options fresh. And no, I think with Ronaldo, we don't overdo it either with him. Like, we don't play him every game in that space of time. Look, because one thing, he's the perfect human specimen. But there's one thing about everyone: we all are human. We are human. Like, he's human. So, like, look, at the end of the day, they have to manage him in that regard. We a couple of comments in here, so I was going to get to a few of the comments here. Richard says, Martial just be Martial. 1 good game every 10. It's Rashford who's really improved under Eric this season. Yeah, Rashford really has. He's been one of the standout players, not only just for United this season, but also in the Premier League. He's been really good. He's been a really good threat up front. Richard also says Milinkovic-Savic has been mentioned as a possible buy. He's basically the modern day Wesley Sneijder. He's just getting linked with us every summer, but I don't think, if you look at the Eric Ten Hag style of playing, the fact we've Casemiro at the club, I don't think Milinkovic-Savic will be bought in it. I could be wrong there, but the fact we've McTominay there as well, and Ten Hag seems to rate him, I don't think that's happening anytime soon. And Richard asks, is the Premiership taking a break for the World Cup? I still don't know what's going on that score. So yeah, it is. The Premier League will be taking a break for 5 weeks for the World Cup. But I'd imagine the players who don't get picked won't be on a break. They'd probably be still training. And, probably say they probably will be a couple of behind closed doors games, I'd say, in that period, I'd say.
Playing for the 23s or just to keep yourself ticking over, because 5 weeks is quite a long time without any football if you're not going to the World Cup.
Yeah, I dare to say, if you look at some of the players in our squad right now, a couple of them mightn't go. If I look at Sancho, probably not going to go. Rashford will go because I look at England's options up front. They're very thin. Maguire, he probably will go, even though he probably shouldn't. Shaw definitely will go. Varane, Casemiro, players like that will go. Bruno definitely will go. Ronaldo will definitely go. But you look at other players like David De Gea, Lindelof. Lindelof will go. Like Wan-Bissaka definitely. Well, never know actually. Wan-Bissaka, Reece James been out at the moment, and Walker been out. You actually never know. But if you look at a large portion of the squad, they won't be going, and they'll need they'll need time to play ball. I reckon, as you said, Phil, they probably will play with the under-23s, a couple of them. And not only that as well, I'd say that there probably will be a couple of behind closed doors games, I'd say, during the World Cup period. I dare to say. Now, look, again, this is not gospel coming out my mouth right now, but just looking at the situation and the kind of season it is, I dare to say that may happen. Again, this is not gospel. This isn't me confirming that from the club, but I'm just going off kind of what happened during other breaks in football during different times. But Phil, we will actually just kind of break down our starting 11 and score predictions for this weekend. Obviously, Lee unfortunately isn't here with us today. He has tested positive for COVID. Hopefully he gets well soon and we do see him again next week. But we do have these involuntary score prediction here, so we will. Me and Phil done his score prediction firm this week, so we will bring up the score prediction at the end of the podcast. But we will kind of give our own starting 11s, then we'll give our predictions kind of after that. So if anyone who's watching on YouTube or on Facebook, do get into the comments over on YouTube and do give us your starting 11s for this Sunday's game and let us know what you think about our 11s. But Phil, give me your 1 to 11 for Sunday's game against Newcastle.
Okay, I'm going to go for De Gea in net. Back four, I'm going to say Dalot right back. I think Varane comes back in. I think Lindelof's played quite well actually in the last couple of games, but I think now Varane's back fit, I think he'll come straight back in to partner Martinez. And I think Luke Shaw, after the performance he had against Everton the other day, I think he was probably our best player. So I think he's deserved to sort of come back into the team and start there at left back. I think Casemiro will start. I think he's finding his feet a little bit now. Building his way into the team. I think his performances have sort of gradually got better and better. I think against Everton, we've seen the sort of worst and best of him at times in that game. There's some really good stuff and some not so good stuff, but I think slowly but surely I think he'll start finding his feet. I think Eriksen and Bruno just in front. I think Eriksen will come back in just for the creativity. I think obviously playing against Newcastle, we're going to need someone in there who can pick the passes out and try and get us going forward. And then I think the front three will be Rashford, Cristiano, Anthony. I think them three have done reasonably well in the last couple of games. I think they're building up quite a good relationship. I think, as I said, Rashford for me has been the best player this season for me in terms of looking like creating stuff and going forward and being positive. And he looks like he's sort of got the bit between his teeth again. I think he should be definitely on the plane to the World Cup. There's a lot of speculation whether he will be or won't be, but for me, he's got to be. I think he looks like the old Marcus Rashford. We said last season when he was, rock bottom and looked like, he had the weight of the world on his shoulders, that it would take a lot for him to get back to where he was. Now, I'm not saying he's completely back to, the Marcus Rashford that we, have seen in previous years, but for me, he's certainly been one of our best players. And yeah, I think for me, he just looks like he's got that fire in his belly again, where he wants to do the right thing. His decision making is a lot better, and he's trying to beat a man and make things happen, which is the Marcus Rashford we want to see.
Definitely, I like his aggressive nature and the fact he's making them direct runs. And he's actually taking players on again, whereas last season we've seen too many times on the Rangnick where he'd take a player on, but then he would almost pass the ball back into Fred or into Luke Shaw's feet, and we'd never have that extra outlet, which was always a tough thing for us to stomach at the time, because that's not the Marcus Rashford that we know, and a player we know there's a player in there. Sean says here in the comments, Ten Hag will have to be angry about the finish in Europe last night. I would expect goals on Sunday. And then Richard gives his 11, and he's gone to Gea, Dalot, Varane, Martinez, Shaw, Eriksen, Bruno, Casemiro, Rashford, Anthony, and Ronaldo. And he says a 3-0 United win as well. But yeah,
anyway,
same.
Nearly went for the same team and the same score prediction there.
It's madness. You two are exchanging notes, I'd say. You're exchanging notes on Twitter there now behind my back.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give my 11 here. It's actually quite similar to yours. I'll go, obviously, De Gea in goal. I don't think Ten Hag will go as mad and put Dubravka in against his former club for his first game. Now, even though Ten Hag has sprung a couple of surprises this season, but I don't think he'd go that mad, to be fair. But I'd say we'll have De Gea in the net. Dallo. I think Varane will come back in. And there's a reason why he was on the bench last night and didn't play. So I dare say Varane will come in. It'll be Martinez. I think Luke Shaw will get his place back in. He was man of the match again last week. He was exceptional. And this is what I hate about Luke Shaw, though, is it takes for someone to come in and challenge his place, for him to really be consistent. And that's where I think long-term we may have to look for a new left-back, because whereas, I really like him, and Phil, from our chats in the last year, and when we met in person, I even said, he's one of my favourite players. But at the end of the day, if he's not going to be consistent throughout a whole season, then, look, there has to be a point where we have to look at maybe bedding Malacia in and making him that left-back full-time going forward, or essentially we go out and, maybe Alvaro Fernandez comes back by the way, who's playing unbelievable with Preston at the minute. Maybe he comes back and him and Malacia go for that left back spot.
I think on that, Keane, as well, that stemmed from a number of seasons where we've said players just got in that comfort zone of knowing, regardless of performances and regardless of the consistency, he was always going to be playing, because either A, there was nobody else who was going to take the place, or B, the managers didn't have the cojones to change them players and drop them. Whereas now we've seen this manager's not bothered about reputations. He's not bothered about players. He's happy to if you're not playing well, you're out of the team. If somebody's training better than you, or applying themselves better, they're playing.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And I think that's the way it should be. And you see that in all the best squads in world football. Managers don't settle for a couple of bad performances. Yeah, all right. But if you're playing well over a period of time, or you're not working hard, which is the main thing for a lot of managers, you're out of the team, and that's it.
You look at how Zinchenko is average at City, and he moves João Cancelo over left back, and you look at that situation. Pep Guardiola wasn't resting on his laurels there. He just said, "Look, Zinchenko, you're good, but you're not great." And he moved Cancelo over there, and look, he's doing fantastic over there. But enough again about them guys. I'd go to my midfield with McTominay obviously out being due to suspension. Obviously, I think it'll be Bruno, Casemiro, and Eriksen. I would have liked to see McTominay start this game with his physicality, especially up against Guimaraes and Joe Linton. I think that there is a danger that they may outrun us in midfield with the runners they have, and Almiron coming inside as well from the right. I think there is a chance they may try overload us.
I agree with you on that. I actually was thinking McTominay, but then I realised he got his 5th booking last week, didn't he?
Yeah.
So
yeah, he was in my 11 as well until when I was doing my research.
Yeah.
There, just for the pod, I seen he was suspended. So yeah, I actually went for a my original lineup had Casemiro and McTominay in a pivot. But obviously with the suspension that wasn't possible. So I think obviously you go Eriksen, Fernandez for that, maybe to gain that bit of control. With my front three, I'm thinking if Martial's fit starting, but look, maybe we have to manage him. I'd maybe prefer him to play against Spurs, to be honest. So I'd go Anthony, Ronaldo, and Rashford up top. Look, if Ronaldo was wrecked after playing 2 games in a couple of days, we can maybe bring Martial on second half. I think that we can do that. I think we need to manage him, because I think he's so. I actually think he's so integral to the way Ten Hag wants to play football. And we need to try manage him as best we can. But again, it's just doing that is another thing, because he's made of glass. He reminds me so much of Louis Saha. Brilliant when he's on the pitch, but so injury prone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a shame, and I think, you know, when we've seen him this season, he's looked a different player, or he's looked the player that we've wanted to see for, you know, so long in terms of, you know, on a consistent basis. It's just a shame that, you know, every time he seems to get up a bit of form, or he has a couple of good games, he seems to either break down or, you know, can't quite maintain, you know, a run of games in the team. But yeah, hopefully, you know, he can overcome this. It's only a minor injury, and you know, he can get his
Yeah, it
opportunity.
was a different injury to the hamstring, so it was his hip, and it was only a knock. So
Yeah,
hopefully he can
precautionary. Yeah,
hopefully he can recover. So again, as I said, I think he's so integral to the way we need to play football up front, especially with the movement and his relationship with Rashford. But we'll both give our score predictions as well, because we're going to wrap it up here, guys. Phil, give me your score prediction for Sunday's game.
yeah. So I said this, you know, before we went live. I think obviously after the game the other day, with the amount of chances that we had, I think this game we are going to sort of make most of some of these opportunities that we're getting. I think I've gone for a 3-1 win. I think Newcastle, obviously a dangerous team, will score. But I feel like, you know, this is a game where could be a sort of marker for us of where we're at. And obviously the two
Yeah.
games after this being Tottenham and Chelsea, I think we need to put a marker down to sort of show, you know, that we're you know, we mean business, and you know, we want to finish in the top 4 this year. So yeah, I'm going for a confident 3-1 win.
Yeah. So Phil is going 3-1. Richard in the comments says 3-0 as well. Lee Lawrence, me and Phil, unfortunately with Lee having COVID, he was unable to give us his score prediction, but me and Phil have a joint agreement that Lee has predicted another 9-0. We messed about that one there before he kills us. So Lee has predicted 2-0 and I've predicted 2-1. And I think it'll be a tough game. I think Newcastle are very good. They're very defensively resolute, but I think we've quality up front to win us the game. And I'm going to go Ronaldo with the winner on Sunday as well. That would be absolutely amazing. But on that note, guys, we will wrap it up there. We do have a lot coming up. We have the match reaction this weekend for the Sunday game, so please do check that out as well. And also Wayne and Paul Parker will be back as well on Monday as well, so make sure to check that out as well. And as always, guys, do smash like the video and hit that subscribe button as well. And you know, we are producing a lot of content coming up soon. And myself and Phil and Lee, I'm going to get us a video where we're going to pick the top 5 Man United seasons of all time. Now, it won't be just top 5 teams like we did last time, like we did the treble winners and the 08 team. We're going to do the top 5 United seasons of all time in one video. That's going to be interesting. So do make sure to check that out. And we will have that up very, very soon. But thanks very much, everyone, for watching. I hope you all have a good weekend, and let's hope we get the 3 points this Sunday. But until then, guys, thanks very much, and we'll see you later.